steps might have been taken at the time to address the issue, they did not continue. I think the word "and" needs, and were therefore not reflected in subsequent statements or practices. So, page 4, page 5. There's one sentence towards the end of the bottom of page 5 where it was said that Mrs. Monroe Ellis said the statute of limitations was not applicable to accounts. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's exactly what she said. I mean, if a debt is no longer statute barred, that can provide a justification for writing it off. So I don't. Yeah. Page 5, yes. Yes. So I mean,
I'll check it.
Perhaps you could just check it, because I do recall a point was made about it, but I don't think it was exactly that. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. And page 9. Yes.
I do recall that in the final paragraph of page 8 that there might have been a time frame in which the committee was supposed to have gotten back this information. That has resonated with me having read it, so I'm not certain if other committee members can recall whether that was so or not, and that the clerk would follow up within that time frame to ensure that it comes back to the committee.
This is to do with the 22 companies that were being wound up, and that it had been a protracted process, and we were seeking a kind of more detailed update as to where each of them was.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't recall myself whether we had specified a particular time frame for reporting, but we had asked the clerk to follow up to ensure that the report was done. I don't know if anybody else has a memory, a specific recollection of that.
Time frame issue came.
There was a time frame issue in another point, you know. Maybe that's the one which is, I think, where we'd asked to submit it on with 30 days, yes, which was on page 6. You saw that one? It was that, okay. All right. Well, subject to that issue on page 5 being sorted out, we could approve the minutes. Would anyone care to move for the adoption of the minutes? Moved by Member Guy, seconded by anyone? Seconded by Member Dunn. Thank you. Okay. So, having concluded the minutes, matters arising from the minutes. No matters arising. All right. So we can move to item 7, which is a review of the accounts of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security in relation to the PATH program and the Rehabilitation program. However, is there anybody here from? Oh, I think they're waiting on the permanent secretary.
Yeah, but Chairman, with the greatest of respect, this committee starts at 10.
Yes.
And public servants are required to be in attendance at that particular time, as are the members and the others who are the support staff. And it is unacceptable, irrespective of whom is supposed to appear before the committee. And could we have the clerk advise members who are expected and due to appear before the Public Accounts Committee that they pay due respect to the time that they are required to be here.
If I might, and I agree with my colleague, but I want to, you know, in Shakespeare said, temper justice with mercy. And I understand that the public servants are to be here and that time starts. But we have had occasions where public servants are here and we as members are not here, not because we are delinquent or negligent, but because there are particular challenges that people have. And not what? No, I'm just wanting to say that we temper, because sometimes little emergencies do crop up and the officers, the public servants have a particular challenge, and I agree that they ought to be here on time, and we do too. But I just think we need to temper justice with mercy, because sometimes our public servants are here and as members we are not here. So I think that what the member has said is timely for all of us. But I say, let us temper justice with mercy. And remember that we all have challenges. I'm coming in from the country this morning, Chairman.
Very good.
And I left very early, but when I got into Kingston, the traffic and what took place brought me here at this time, and I left home from 5. So I just want to say...
Well, Member Dalrymple Philippa, your intervention has allowed the ministry personnel to take their seats, and so we're now able to proceed. I won't dwell on it any longer. They're here, and we can proceed. So, welcome, Madam Permanent Secretary, and your team to the Public Accounts Committee this morning. And I would ask if the Auditor General would commence the discussion, and we can take it up for wherever she wishes to leave off. I think we're beginning with the PATH program under the order in the agenda.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. There are two matters, as you've indicated, the rehabilitation program and the PATH program. The prompt that was circulated earlier for the PATH program identifies 4 different projects, and I would have indicated to the clerk that there's only one issue that still remains of concern to me. I believe the ministry has provided a response subsequently yesterday, but I would allow them to provide the committee with that response, and that is in relation to advances totaling 211 million, which remained outstanding up to, I would say, a couple of days ago. And of course, advance really represents unidentified, for want of a better word, expenditure that has not been properly accounted for, and therein would lie my concern. So I'd allow the ministry to respond to that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Auditor General. PS?
Yes.
$211 million, a lot of money, and so I would ask that you provide a response to that. Mm-hmm. What we have in our prompt is that it was anticipated that these advances would be cleared, in other words, identified as to what they were and properly accounted for by the end of March this year. We're now in June. And it says that an officer was contracted at the beginning of October and was trained internally on how to clear the advance accounts. But as at the date of the prompt, the evidence had not been provided to indicate whether or not the advances had in fact been cleared. So what I would ask is if you could just introduce your team and then give us a response on that issue, please.
All right, thank you very much, Chairman, members of the Auditor General's team, Ministry of Finance, and members of the Public Accounts Committee. With me this morning, to my right, I have Project Director Ms. Elsa Marks-Willis. To my left, I have Ms. Suzette Morris, Director of Social Security. and I'm not sure where everybody else is sitting, but I will just tell you the names. Ms. Fancy Admon, the Director in charge of Public Assistance. Mr. Fagan, who is from the National Insurance Scheme Division. Mr. Marshall, from the National Insurance Scheme Compliance. Jason Anderson, Principal Financial Officer. Stacey Ann Johnson Carr, Project Accountant. Hope Fisher from the NIF. Ms. Coombs, Director Accounts. Andrea Miller Stennett, who is in charge of the Manpower Program. And Antoinette Bennett, Senior Director in charge of HR. In relation to the advances, since the audit and more recently, we have delved into the figures. And what we have realized is that 98.7 million out of the 211 million actually represented salary, traveling and subsistence and per diem allowances that were in fact paid to staff. Now, how the project is structured, the World Bank, some of these expenses are World Bank chargeable expenses. However, salaries, traveling, and so forth are in fact advanced using GOJ resources. And then when the project draws down from the World Bank resources, these advances are supposed to be cleared, meaning the World Bank would reimburse the government for having advanced the expenditure. So $98.7 million is in relation to salaries, traveling, and subsistence allowance paid to staff employed to the project. We will be working with the Ministry of Finance to have these advances cleared. It's actually an accounting function that should have been cleared. We have since cleared approximately another 21 million has been cleared. Those were in relation to a social housing project and 2 other smaller suppliers. Those have since been cleared. And there is a $45.2 million, which it was discovered that there was a coding error in the accounting. So these were actually cash grants that were paid to beneficiaries classified as adult poor. But there was an error in the coding in the accounting system that recorded them as an advance rather than benefit payments. So that was an error, Mr. Chairman. So out of the 211 million, as it stands today, we have approximately $45.6 million, which represents payments to suppliers for goods and services that needs to be cleared, that we're working to clear.
And what is your anticipated time frame for clearing the remaining $45 million?
Well, Chairman, we are working to clear that advance, and I expect that within the next 4 months we should be able to clear those advances because we have somebody working. We actually need to clear them because the project is winding up, so we're in the stage of doing closeout activities, so we have to complete the process.
I see. In terms of the 90-odd million that was for salaries and other such costs, you said that the government had advanced those funds looking for reimbursement out of the loan proceeds.
Right.
Has that been done? Has that reimbursement taken place yet, or is it still pending?
Chairman, we have to work with the Ministry of Finance to do it. What I'm told, what would normally happen is that these are chargeable expenses, but you understand how salaries have to be paid every month. And so periodically funds would be drawn down from the project, lodged into the consolidated fund, and salaries are paid. So we have to work with the Ministry of Finance to sort out how we clear these advances.
So these aren't really clear then at this point. You've just kind of identified what they are, but they're not actually, from an accounting perspective, yet cleared.
From an accounting perspective, no, they're not clear, but they are not, how should I put it now? They are advances for salaries for persons who actually worked on the project.
Right, so you know what they're for.
We know what they're for.
But they're just not tidied up from an accounting perspective.
From the accounting side.
Yeah. So you're hoping that within 4 months, all of this would have been completed?
Yes, Chairman, because the project is in closing out stage, so we have to tidy up all the outstanding accounts and close out.
I see. Any questions from members?
Just a little curious, Chairman. AG, during the course of an audit in any ministry, is there an exchange are there queries during the auditing period to the officers within the ministry, the designated MDAs? Well, I ask this question because the prompt says that subsequent to our report, which would have been in about September, October, MLSS advised that an officer was contracted. The question I want to ask is that, wasn't this part of the discussions during the audit that was done at the ministry, in that your officers were seeking to get information as to what obtains with this uncleared balances? To say now that $98 million was due to salary and traveling allowances, wouldn't that be information that would have been readily available at that point in time?
Through you, Chair, my understanding of your question is you're just seeking clarity as to why this information that is being presented by the PS was not made available at the time of the audit. I don't believe the information was available at that point in time. I cannot say whether the necessary investigation was done. The Permanent Secretary can speak to that, but we would have alluded to that in our own report to say that, let me just quote here, that despite requests, PATH did not provide evidence to inform the audit that the goods or services were provided for the sums advanced or the reasons why the amounts were not cleared.
Member, I can't speak exactly to the time of the audit, right? However, this is the information that I have. When we got the figure and we started delving behind the $211 million as to what would have accounted for these large sums, this is the information that we're able to gather, that 98.7 million is in fact related to salaries, and because of how the project is funded and reimbursed, that is what is accounting for this outstanding amount, which needs to be corrected from an accounting perspective, because the fact is the staff were there or are there and they did receive payment.
AG, back to procedure again from your side. I've seen instances where before the final report is done, a draft is given to the MDAs, and it is in that context I'm asking this particular question, because this would have been a draft, this would have been included in the draft prior to the final audit.
This response wasn't made available to the Auditor General prior to this meeting. I mean, this prompt is a fairly current document, and no doubt they would have had an opportunity to respond because the prompt includes responses. So this has been something that has only very recently been sorted.
Yes. So the report, the substantive report, would have been completed July 2017, because based on the World Bank's requirement, the audit has to be completed by the end of July, and so the report is actually precedes the finalization of the audit. Prior to inclusion in the annual report, the ministry, department, or agency is provided an opportunity to respond again to the findings. And Post that, then this process takes place, where the matter makes it to the annual report because the evidence has not been provided. Then they are provided another opportunity before the sitting of the PAC. Well, we seek to verify that this issue is still outstanding. So it would have been from July, before July, in fact, that the matter would have been brought to the attention of the project management.
However,
Chairman?
it has been satisfied, however. The information is now before us, and we have an explanation.
Yes, there's what we've been told is that there's $45 million which is not yet cleared.
Yes.
And there's $90 million which they know what it was about, but
Yes.
the necessary accounting entries or whatever it may be to clear it out hasn't yet been completed. So, and we've been told that it's going to be up to 4 months
For them to complete.
to finish
And
all of
I
that.
think, in all fairness, Chairman, that we should give them time so that it can be completed properly, and then we can hear what the situation is. That is my feeling. I really, because they have been given an opportunity, as the Auditor General said, they've done what they have, and they need some more time to complete it. Let us give them time to complete it and move on.
There's nothing we can do except to ask them to complete it within the 4 months that they've indicated that they need. So we hope that that will be done so that we won't see this recurring again in a future report. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you see, I must apologize as well because this additional information, I believe, came to the office just yesterday. But there's something that I'm not clear on, and that is the approval that is required from the Ministry of Finance. Is it that the funds on the project was depleted and the ministry is seeking environment approval to vary from another project to offset these expenses? Why is approval needed from the ministry to clear these advances if funds are available or the budget space is available?
Right. Well, through you, Chairman, what I'm told is that it's the funding source. So the staff, the project has ended, right? And this is supposed to be paid now from GOJ resources. Oh, Chairman, my apology. I am not an accountant, so my apology. Chairman, the World Bank project has ended, and so the staff are still employed, and so it is the funding source that would need to be changed from World Bank to GOJ. So it is really an accounting issue that needs to be sorted out. We can't sort it out alone. We have to work with the Ministry of Finance to sort it out.
I must say I'm not any clearer about this. This 90-odd million was used to for salaries and travel allowances. What we were originally told was because of the need to pay salaries on a timely basis, those funds were paid out of GOJ funds with a view to the loan being drawn down and the GOJ being reimbursed once the necessary steps for drawdown had taken place. I asked you whether that had happened. I think you indicated you weren't sure. But now you're saying now it's the reverse, that the monies were, the loan was drawn down to pay and the GOJ is to pay back that money? What are you saying?
No, GOJ is not going to pay it back. Yeah. They're going to absorb it. Mm-hmm. So, Chairman, my understanding, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting the proper accounting, the project is dually funded, or was, because the project is now in closeout phase. So the project was dually funded by the World Bank and Government of Jamaica. The World Bank has certain expenditures that is made from the loan resources. Government of Jamaica picks up certain expenses. The project management team, they're for approved, up to an approved amount, the World Bank picks up that expense. But how it is normally done from an accounting perspective is that the payments are usually made, and then the loan funds are drawn down, paid into consolidated fund to cover those payments. So the project has ended. However, the government of Jamaica continues to finance the activity and the staff. And so at the end of it, the proper accounting needs to be done to reconcile this amount, which is in fact a GOJ expenditure.
Chairman.
Yes, Member Guy.
I am more confused. Because if I'm to go by what is here in the prompt, and I'll read, the review revealed that PATH did not clear advances in a timely manner to ensure that expenditure was properly brought to account. This is in relation to 2016-2017, right? This was demonstrated by an uncleared advances at March 31st, 2017, totaling 211, with 92% outstanding in excess of 12 months. Despite requests, PATH did not provide evidence to inform the audit that the goods or services were provided for the sums advanced. My understanding of this is that that amount was given to PATH, and that the Auditor General now requires documentation to say that this is what the $212 million that we could not account for is being accounted for. So the answer I'm getting is confusing me a little further, because whether the project has closed or not, this is something that is a retrospective analysis of that period of time. So all that should happen, and I stand corrected, is that PATH should indicate to the AG that, yes, 98 is for that, 48 is for goods and services, and provide the documentation to say that this is what it's for. I think that's what is being sought here. Isn't that so, AG?
I think the challenge is that the explanation, which has been long-standing, has just been forthcoming at the very last minute before this meeting. So the Auditor General is hearing it for the first time, as are we. The PS herself is struggling to really understand exactly what the explanation is. It seems to be something to do with the mechanism by which loan funds are drawn down and applied to the project. The amounts that were 90-odd million of it, we know, she knows, it was for salaries and traveling allowances. But the accounting side of it, as to why it's still unclear, I'm still unclear on, but it doesn't sound to me like we're going to get to the bottom of this now. So, Auditor General, if you have anything you want to say on this, please do. Otherwise, I would suggest that we ask for this to be clarified in writing and delivered to us in time for our next meeting. The clerk has stepped out, but I'm going to repeat that when she comes. Yeah. Auditor, you have anything you'd like to say on this, ma'am?
Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's beyond an accounting issue. There are two outstanding questions which we are going to seek to clarify, and that one is, why was the staff retained when the project ended, and two, why was prior approval not obtained from the Ministry of Finance and is only now being sought. And that would require further clarification. So I do agree that I will report back to the committee on this matter, having verified those issues.
Very, very well.
Chairman, we will work with the Auditor General team to clarify. However, just to indicate that we did get the approval from the Ministry of Finance to retain the project staff. But we will work with the team to sort through this particular issue.
Yes, PS. All right. So, any other questions in relation to the PATH prompt or this issue?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, my apologies, but could I just ask a question on the beneficiary management information system? It's the one above on page 3. Or you had passed that?
Go ahead, man. No, we had actually focused on the one which was, for which there was an X indicating that the matter was was outstanding. So we didn't touch on this at all, but please feel free to do so.
Yeah, but the reason I asked is this, I must tell you, the whole path system is one of the most frustrating for me as an MP for the last 11 years. I find it one of the programs that's very opaque. It's hard to get information. You see people in your constituency who are obvious candidates to be beneficiaries. You refer them to the office, nothing happens. Or worse, you hear that they go and they investigate and deny them. And there's sometimes, it's persons with disabilities who are catching with a neighbor or a family member, but because the neighbor or the family member lives in a house with a fridge and whatever, they then disqualify the person with the disability who is there on a charitable basis. And it's very difficult to get any information out of it. They're totally unresponsive to parliamentarians, in my experience. And I really wonder if this new beneficiary management system, or the one that we're trying to implement, is going to assist in this. I mean, and the path has a number of different programs. There's the one for the indigent persons, there's persons with disabilities, there is the students who they're trying to help. But I find it often works in the opposite way that it's intended. I'll take, for example, the one with that assists students. If students miss a certain amount of days, they're taken off the PATH program. Am I correct?
No.
Yes, you are. Well, maybe that is not your intention at head office, but many, many times I've had parents who come to me complaining that because students missed a certain amount of days from school, they discontinue their PATH benefit. Now, usually the reason they missed days from school was that the parent couldn't afford to send them to school. So because they couldn't afford to send the child to school, you're now punishing the child for the parent being indigent. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, I mean, you're really stacking the deck against this child now. I mean, they're already wouldn't have done very well at the GSAT level. They would have been sent to a school that's not a top school, far away from their home. They already have to find the extra money for the transportation, etc. And then if they miss a couple of days, which is almost inevitable, because the single mother of multiple children just can't afford it, then they cut them off of PATH. I mean, I don't understand it at all. I see the PS shaking her head as if my experience is unique, but other colleagues here are explaining that they have the same thing. So I'd really like to get some clarity on this from the PS. Thank you.
So there are two issues, PS. The first relates to the beneficiary management information system and whether it will enable more transparent management of information and decision making relating to persons who, for example, are declined benefits or taken off of benefits, where inquiries are made on their behalf by members of parliament or others, and currently where the responses are not forthcoming. So that's one issue. Mm-hmm. The second issue relates to how children in particular, though this may be an example of a more general perception, that the rules are applied in a way which worsens rather than improves the situation which the overall program is seeking to address. so that you have children who desperately need the assistance because of the direness of their condition or their family circumstances. They're unable to always meet the requirements of PATH, and the response, we are being told, and more than one member seems to have experienced this. All of us have experienced this. The response is that they're denied benefits, which just worsens the already dire situation that the child is in. So I'd like your response on both issues, please, ma'am.
All right, Chairman, thank you very much, and we welcome the opportunity to always provide clarification. A new BMIS was not being developed. What was being developed, or should have been developed, was a system for the Steps to Work program that should have been able to be integrated with the existing beneficiary management system. So I just thought I'd clarify that issue. As it relates to the program, Chairman, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm also going to propose that maybe as a ministry we can meet with the parliamentarians and we can actually walk, who is interested of course, and we can walk you through the steps. We can show you our IT system. We can show you how the data comes in and how we calculate benefits and how persons are paid. Chairman, when the PATH program was implemented in 2002, prior to that, we had a number of programs that were fragmented and targeting the same persons. And at the time, it was felt that the government was basically providing benefits to persons without any, what is called, responsibility on the parents or the family's perspective. And at the time, it was felt that, and I think it still holds true, that the number one way out of poverty is to be healthy and to be educated. And so at the time when the program was developed, the benefits, the payment of the benefits were linked to school attendance and to well baby clinics for the babies who are on the program. Now, Chairman, we do not take persons off the program despite what the public or beneficiaries of PATH may say. We do not take persons off the program because they do not attend schools the required number of days. What happens, Chairman, is that there's a portion of the benefit that is paid to the family regardless of whether or not they attend school or regardless of whether or not the children are taken to the health centers for their well baby visits. If the child attends school the required number of time, then the family gets the full benefit. If they don't, then a portion of the benefit is withheld. And that is how the program has been designed from inception, because it is felt that we need to motivate families to ensure that the children attend school and that the babies get their vaccinations. So I'd be very happy, Chairman, to walk the members through in a more detailed presentation and discussion. If persons are interested, we can organize that. But we don't take persons off the program for that. There was another question that was raised, and let me address, about persons referred who seemingly don't qualify. We do have a program where there is an appeals process where if someone does not qualify for the program, they can appeal the decision. Now, Chairman, if you allow me, let me back up a little bit. The selection process for PATH uses what we call a proxy means test. So it's not a straight means test, it's a proxy means test which tries to identify indicators of poverty. So what we have done is to take the subjectivity out of the selection process. And when you do that, you're going to end up with errors of exclusion and errors of inclusion. So to mitigate against the errors of exclusion, we have an appeals process where the individual can say, hey, you didn't select me, but I think I really deserve this program, and it goes to a committee in the parish that reviews the applicant.
Follow.
Just to follow, you said have not been removed from the program, but not being removed from the program, but a substantial portion of their benefits being stopped. In their mind, they've been effectively removed from the program. But could you just say what is the conditional portion of the grant relative to the total? Could you give me the total amount, for example, that they would get per child, per whatever period, and what amount would be withheld from that?
All right. The monthly benefit per individual in the family. So it's not per family, right?
Per child.
Per child, or it could be for an elderly or a person with disability, because there are different categories.
Well, I'm specifically speaking now to the child.
To the children.
Who may or may not, or the child who may or may not be attending school, meeting the threshold.
Okay, so the monthly benefit ranges, the lowest for the children is 1,350, and the highest is 2,100 per month.
And that's based on what age?
It's based on the grade in school. So the younger children, it's 1,350. And the base benefit that they receive is $600 per month. So at the lowest level, it's about half.
And at the highest level, it's about 75%, close to 75% that would be withheld, 75%.
Third, about, yes.
Yeah,
about
600 over 2,100.
Yes, your math is probably better than mine.
Let's round it to 30%. 70% would be withheld, and 600 is about 30%. So 600 is the unconditional portion. So essentially 1,500 at the upper end, assuming, say, high school.
Per month.
Per month. 1,500 would be the conditional portion, which the parent would not get if they don't meet their attendance. And so it comes, first of all, I mean, those amounts are really not very material in terms of today's expenses. You know, children, depending on how many taxis, especially rural areas, depending on how many taxis they have to take to get to school, I mean, their transportation per day could be $500. So, you know, 2,100 is not a lot of money in the scheme of things. But chances are, if they did get that $1,500 extra, it might help them to go to school 3 more days or 5 more days per month. So I just don't, I understand the incentivizing of the parent, let's say, to not just want them to collect the money without actually complying. But in a perverse kind of way, we're end up punishing the child. And I don't think that can make sense. It would seem to me it would be better to have a caseworker if you don't meet the threshold of attendance, to have a caseworker visit the home, see why, and then have that caseworker recommend, you know, whether it is, you know, the irresponsible parent taking the money and using for something else, or just that even with the 2,100 they can't manage, and maybe they need 5,000 or 6,000 to be able to get this child to attend school, you know, the required number of days.
Member Guy and then member.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The PSU mentioned the appeal process in the parish. This one is probably as worse as the one that Member Bunting referred to a while ago, because significant number of people have reported that they have not gotten any changes in terms of the position by path. Hence, my question is, what percentage of the appeal are usually
successful, result in a change.
Yes, result in a change.
Yes. All right, so that's the second question. The first was about caseworkers and whether there could be a more nuanced approach to discontinuing benefits. The second was a data-related or statistical question as to what is really the utility of this appeals process, what percentage in rough terms, or if you have specifics, great, of appeals result in a turnaround of a decision. Member Dalrymple, you wanted us to ask you a question?
I just want to add a new dimension to it, because I'm from a particularly rural area with a lot of poor persons, and I understand what my colleagues have said because I hear it from my people too. But I'm on the ground, and as needy sometimes as our folks are or people are, there's a gap in priority. I see it, I know it, because I deal with it personally. It's something that I handle. I agree we need casework to look at the situation, but I do believe we also need some incentive for the children to come out, because, and I'll tell you, very often they get it. I see it, I deal with it daily. And instead of using those funds for the children to go to school, they use it to put, I'll tell you, beads in hair, go to a function, and then they come back. Hold on, it's what I know because I sit and do it. Nobody does it for me in my constituency. And they come, and they say, we take off, this no happen. And it happens even at this time of the year, because parents spend a tremendous amount of money on graduation gowns, on graduation hairdos, on a lot of things. And then, come September, they come out in their droves because they cannot afford to do this, and a drop-off path, and I can't buy the books, and I can't buy that. I believe in helping my constituents. I believe in helping to educate because that is the way forward and progress. But I do believe that there has to be a method and a way to let our people understand that we have to get the priorities right. And sometimes I'm telling you, because as I say, I'm on the ground with mine, you know. And the money comes, and instead of sending it to that, they have a court's installment to pay, they have a this, they use it for that. And then they come back. And I am concerned. And I'm sure other members are, because if you do it, you know, I have people who I have a particular interest in, so you jump quickly, and my first thing is, why are they taking off? And I go through the same process because I do it every time. And then you look a little deeper and you realize, look, then how, but somebody will say, but Miss so-and-so has happened. And I do believe that we need to help, but we have to get our people to buy into what is happening and to understand that we have to somehow get, or all of us have to prioritize what it is we want to do. So I hear, and there are some genuine cases, as my colleagues have said, that they know of, but I know by and large, sometimes funds come in, and instead of stretching for the children to go to school, they use it elsewhere, the children don't go, and there are many people who feel if they go 3 days, all right, you know, and they come, but as members of parliament, we are the right target because we represent them, so they come to us and they expect us to fix it. So I think that what the ministry has to do is to really look at people in their ministries, in the parishes, to do some casework, going and look into the homes. But by and large, I don't want for an incentive to be removed for parents to understand that they must make the effort for children. I can tell you, I can think right now of a student who dropped out in my area. Went through, and you pay the money, and they still, the teachers tell you then they don't come for the classes.
Member Dunn?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I know you mentioned that there's a beneficiary information system, and I'm not sure what algorithms are used in determining the different scoring that makes up the final analysis of who gets what. But the question I'd like to ask is, what is the role of the Member of Parliament in all of this? Because we are the persons that they come to every day. So I know you want to eliminate as much subjectivity as possible out of a system, but if there's an algorithm, then there must be, as the representative, there must be some measure of something that values the opinion of that person who was elected to serve them and that they will come to on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just to give the PS one chance to respond. Sorry? Just to give the PS one chance to respond. While we've been sitting here, I've just retrieved some records from my office to substantiate what I'm saying. We have cases where persons registered on the program. We referred them, they went there, they qualified, they registered on the program, but it was 8 years before they got their first check. 8 years. Now, that could be solving a problem that's no longer exists. It takes so long. Is it that people, once qualified, don't automatically, do they have to wait until there is funds available or space available? Is there a limited budget, in other words, so that if you have too many qualified beneficiaries, you just can't put everybody on? I struggle to understand how it could take 8 years. And also in many cases, people have to do some re-registrations. I don't know if it's part of an audit or what the purpose is, but we also get many complaints of these several re-registrations. And even before they actually start benefiting from the program, they have to go through these several re-registrations. And in the case of the seniors and the babies, we spoke about the students not meeting the threshold of attendance. If the seniors and babies, they complain to me that if they do not attend the clinic for 1 month, they're automatically removed. You know, well, not removed. Not removed. The incentive or the disincentive portion is no longer paid. I mean, it really seems to me when you're dealing with these very vulnerable groups, that while, you know, I can appreciate that there may be irresponsible beneficiaries or parents of beneficiaries in the system, I don't think we should penalize everybody. Those cases where, you know, people are abusing it, then the Child Protection Agency should be called in and they take the case from there. But we make it so difficult for everybody because of that small percentage of irresponsible parents that might abuse the system, or irresponsible beneficiaries that might abuse the system.
So, PS, is there a sort of good suffering for the bad approach that's taken in reducing persons' benefits? Is there any kind of assessment done of a particular case, or it's purely a question of an algorithm saying you didn't attend, bam, you drop from the 2,000 to the 600? It's just done on the system, so to speak, without any further investigation? And the only question I have is, do you have any data that would say at a given point in time, what would be the typical percentage of your overall portfolio of beneficiaries who would be on the reduced benefit because they're not complying with one of the requirements or other? In other words, if your cohort is X 100,000 persons and who are getting benefits, what portion of them at any given point in time would be on the reduced, or would only be receiving the compulsory portion as opposed to the discretionary portion, or the qualification portion that you have to meet requirements for in order to obtain?
Thank you very much, Chairman. There's been a lot of questions and comments, so I hope that I will answer I'm not sure in the order, but I hope I'll be able to answer all the questions. Let me state categorically that nobody waits to be put on the program because we don't have enough resources. There's never been in the history, the 15-year history of the program, that the Ministry of Finance has never provided us with enough resources. Once we advise the Ministry of Finance how much is required to make that payment, we have always been provided with the resources, so there's never an issue. The issue, and I can't speak for the 8th year, it is not typical, right? We do have instances in the past that I know people come, they apply for the program, but we do not get all the required documentation. For example, copies of the birth certificate or a proper identification for the individual. And years gone by, we did have an issue in the program where we had quite a number of duplicates, so especially children. So the mother will come and apply for the program with her 3 children, for instance. The grandmother comes and applies for 2 of those 3 children and maybe another 2 children from another of her daughters or sons' household. And so when we were more relaxed in terms of the documentation, we found that we had quite a number of duplicates. The Auditor General's team that has been here with us for a while can tell you that that was an issue. That is no longer such an issue anymore. It's not a significant issue because we have sort of insisted that we have to get a proper identification for the individual applying along with the children. So our database does that cross-checking. What happens, so there may have been an issue with a duplicate, for example, that may have prevented that person from getting the benefit. But I can't speak to the specific. I can only give you examples. But remember, can you allow me to? Okay, go on.
No, but as I'm hearing your explanation, I'm beginning to understand why there are such administrative challenges. But the unfortunate thing is that the most destitute, the most desperate, the most vulnerable who really need the help are often the ones who can't establish their identity, especially in rural areas. You have children who were never registered. Their birth was never registered. And it is typical that those would be from the least, the parents or the single mother with the least capacity. And when we start, we really disadvantage those who are the very, very bottom, the most vulnerable, by putting all these hurdles of identification. I mean, we talk about needs. You could have taken the baby foot bottom and take the footprint of it and run it through the EOJ's identification system to remove duplicates. I mean, there must be easier ways, but when you put that burden on those, the reason they're in this desperate situation is because the parent is probably illiterate, is probably a teenage mother catching somewhere. She probably has 3 or 4 of these children, some of whom were birthed at home and never registered. So these are these should be the ones most targeted. These should be the beneficiaries most targeted. But when you put these hurdles, it makes it virtually impossible for them to access.
But Chairman, can I be allowed? Because I'm afraid I might forget all the questions.
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead.
Some years ago, and we continue to do it, we do work with the RGD to work with the families to get their birth certificates.
Who covers the cost?
Where we cover the cost.
You do?
Yes. All right. But also, if persons will recall that every child that is born in a public hospital is now given one free copy of their birth certificate, and that has been since quite a while now. So the families should have at least the birth certificates for the children. The question about the non-compliance and whether or not we are really stacking the odds against poor families, I think in essence that's what you were saying, Mr. Bunting. We have to recall that PATH provides a cash benefit, but that's just one of the benefits that a family who is in receipt of PATH actually gets. There is the school feeding within the schools that they receive. There are the transportation. We started a pilot of a transportation allowance for PATH, but we have now merged that with the Ministry of Education and their rural transportation pilot that is going on. We have the beneficiaries of PATH households who, if they're in fifth form and they're doing exams, the Ministry of Education covers the cost of those exams fees, and PATH students are not required to pay those additional fees in high schools. I'm not talking about the tuition fee, I'm talking about the additional fees. So there are a number of other benefits directed to the children in schools.
But Chairman,
no, I'm talking about not the tuition fees, Chairman. I'm talking about those additional, yes,
Chairman,
those auxiliary fees.
Chairman,
yeah.
P.S. I appreciate very much what you're telling us about, but the basis for Mr. Bunting's question is getting those individuals on PATH. Then they can benefit from all the other things that you have mentioned just now. How do we get those children who the system has rejected them simply because, one, they don't have these information that PATH requires, and based on your input in the system, the algorithm comes back out, okay, they don't benefit. Do we have another method to ensure that they can get on this program? Because those are the ones that he's speaking to. And unless you are on the system or in the system, you will not get the school feeding program, you will not get the bus transportation, you will not get the secondary and the tertiary assistance to go to school. How do we get those persons so that they can benefit from those other systems that PATH provide assistance for? And that is a question I think that all of us as members here are seeking to find out from the ministry in relation to PATH.
Yes, Dr. Guy, there is the appeals process that I mentioned earlier. And just to give you some statistics, approximately 10% of the persons who receive benefits on PATH came through the appeals process. And another question was asked as to what is the percentage of those who go to the appeals actually get on the program. And it is 70% approximately of all the persons who are referred through the appeals process. The committee says yes. And on the program, it's 10% of the population I
wonder what percentage of people who are rejected actually go through the appeal process.
30%.
No.
You mean?
Who actually, yes, persons who are rejected by the algorithm, and who, what portion of the rejects actually go through an appeal?
I don't have that data. That would be a little bit of data mining to try
it would be an interesting thing to note, because on the face of it, the appeal process is allowing 70% of persons to get into the program. But if the numbers who are appealing are a relatively small percentage of those who are rejected, for example, are they aware of the appeal right that they have? And maybe they aren't. Not all of them are, I don't think. And how easy is it to access the appeal? Those are issues which I think are important in terms of access to the program as a whole.
Well, the appeals process is open to persons who were not selected, and or officers in the parishes advise the persons about the appeals process. If I could go to the social workers, Chairman, there was a question raised about our social workers, and we do have a case management process. I will admit, however, that based on the ratio, currently we have 147 social workers employed in the ministry. The PATH program, we have just about 150,000 families, individual families. So if we were to do a ratio, it's 1 social worker to 1,000 families. We do, however, do case management where we try to work with the families that we call chronically non-compliant. What we mean by chronically non-compliant, every payment successively, they are only getting that base benefit. We need to find out what is the reason for that. Is it some additional intervention or support that we need to offer to the family? And it was out of some of the concerns why we have the Steps to Work program, where we are working with some of the adult members in the PATH households to get them into some labor market type intervention, because of course the best way to provide for the family is to get persons gainfully employed. I hope I answered all the...
If I may, I mean...
Dr. Dunn was asking about the algorithm, the role of the MP in the algorithm.
Doesn't exist.
Well, Dr. Dunn, the role of the MP is in the appeals process. The algorithm is, I don't have anything to do with the algorithm, right? The algorithm was developed in conjunction with the Planning Institute of Jamaica. It was developed from the Survey of Living Condition, data coming from the Survey of Living Condition. So it's really something that is very objective. I mean, you understand it's a mathematical formula. What I would say in the whole PATH process, as an MP, and I'm not an MP, but as an MP, I would encourage you to advise your persons about the appeals process. You can refer the persons to us, and if you don't feel comfortable enough with the parish office, you can always refer the individuals, if they're really problem cases, to us at head office, and I will ensure that the specific cases are investigated.
But do you have data? Do you have data on the rejects? In other words, if we wanted to find out how many persons in our constituency in the last 12 months had applied and not been successful, would we be able to get that data with their names so we could consider assisting them with appeals?
We would not have it by constituency. We have it by parish and post office, because that's how our database is configured. So if you know the post offices, we could, yes, we could generate that sort of data.
Through you, Chair, I mean, I'm hearing so many issues here, and I think maybe one of the ways to solve is by 140-something social workers is just not enough. I don't see it. I think that's why we're having such an issue. And if it is that the social worker, with the role of the MP, since right now we have no role, but we do get the phone calls, we do get the persons coming to us, and we don't really know what to tell them. If we can possibly work in the future directly with the social worker, I think that could possibly solve some of the problems and issues that we're having if we have a relationship with the social worker in our area. Most, I think, of the constituencies have maybe 3 or 4 divisions that they have. So in each place, we know who the social worker is. So when I have people calling me saying that they've been applied 2 years and 3 years and they haven't heard anything. And these are elderly person taking care of a child that the mother has possibly passed away. Or that's the parent for that child, and they just can't manage and they can't understand why they can't get on the PATH program. So I think one of the ways to possibly solve this is to allow the MPs You know, you may probably see issues with the MP getting involved with this, but if the MP is working directly with the social worker, or we have some sort of a relationship, I think this will possibly solve some of the problems. Another one I'm here with Member Dal Rimpo talking about, and I also have issues when I live in the US with, you know, the food stamp problems of persons using it for other reasons. Maybe if PATH develop a program to, as you said, there are different sections of the PATH program where you have the school feed inside, we don't have buses in all rural areas, to say you pay directly where they have a pass and they present that pass to the bus. So again, that's an issue that we have in Jamaica to contend with. Because in my area, I have the JUTC bus, but I think a lot of the children take the taxi or what have you, or the minibuses. So I think something possibly should be developed where the children can use that system. And another thing, for if we have an issue with the parents using the funds, you know, to do other things than take care of the child. If it is that they're providing lunch or breakfast for the children at school, and the other monies that come in is to provide food or necessities for the child, then why not pay that money directly to the supplier? In every district, in every community, you do have stores where people shop. So why not pay that check? If you have 100 persons possibly in a community, you know, why not choose a few places around and pay those, you know, not just choose one, just to be fair, to choose a number of shops in the communities and pay them directly for the goods and services, for supplies, for food supplies or what have you, if it is that we have a concern. I mean, that's just my 2 cents, and think that this would possibly maybe help some of the problem. But I think for me directly, I get too many calls that I just can't answer about parents or grandparents wanting the child or the person in their care to put on the PATH program, and they just can't. So I think that really needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I think certainly if members of parliament were aware of the persons who are being rejected by the system and can look into those cases and perhaps assist those that definitely merit an appeal with going through the appeal process, that might be of utility. As it stands, we don't get that information given to us, and you don't have the data as to what percentage of persons who are rejected actually end up appealing, which I think would be a very useful thing to know. I'd love to get that data if you can provide it at a future point in time.
Mr. Chairman, just a final suggestion to the PS. I mean, she very kind offered to hold some kind of seminar, but I would prefer you not do that. I'm sure most of us parents spent a great deal of time on our education, and we're at least we can get by reading.
If you
can
want
just
to
prepare,
attend, you can attend.
If you just prepare, you know, a sort of guide for MPs or political representatives, persons, stakeholders who are interested, just, you know, giving a lot of the information that you've given here, but in particular, how to access this appeal, because I confess I was not aware of the process. I'm just not understanding. There is an appeal, but I don't know how I would help somebody to action that appeal if they came to my office frustrated, which they often do. So if you could just, you know, prepare something that you could circulate electronically to all, I would say not just members of parliament, but councillors as well, because they often have, you know, their own offices and assistance that they offer to their constituents. So that would be just my final suggestion. So.
That would be very useful. Help, a sort of orientation to PATH for political representatives would be a very useful thing to have.
Yes, Chairman. I was only suggesting because if the Hansard is shown, some of these questions that we answer every time we come, we're speaking to a lot of the same questions. So, you know, we will nonetheless
Some of us
prepare a
joined a
package.
few months ago. You expect him, should he go through all the Hansards of since PATH was introduced 15 years ago to try and distill?
No, but we will prepare something, and nonetheless, I think it is still of merit if there are persons in the Parliament who want to be part of a not a long thing. We could do something, you know, for an hour if persons want, but we will still circulate something, because I think it would be helpful to be able to ventilate a lot of the questions. But if I may be allowed to speak with the question or the comment about working with MPs, we're not adverse to working with the MPs. I think that MPs, you're on the ground, and I've often said I can't do what an MP does, but you're on the ground and you're close to the people. So we're not adverse to working with the MPs, and we will work with you to see how we can provide the kinds of information and the social workers that may be assigned to your particular geographic area.
All right, thank you, PS.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just make one comment? When persons come into our office and apply for PATH, instantly after they complete the application, because it's an interview process that is done, and as they are interviewed at the end, the applicant is told whether or not they've been provisionally selected. And the reason it is provisionally selected is that information is then verified by the social worker. All right? So if somebody comes to you and tell you that they're waiting 2 years, there's probably a little bit more to that. And maybe if you know a little bit more about the program, you can question a little deeper that comment. But they're told immediately, as of about 4 years now.
Thank you. So that wraps up the PATH aspect of the proceedings, and we move to the...
No, Chairman, there's just one question I want to ask. AG, page 2 of the prompt. Are those employees still within the system? And if they are, what measures are being taken to effect that reimbursement? And if they aren't, how is that money to be recouped?
I cannot confirm if they're still in the system, but Mr. Chairman, this is an issue that I want to look at further with the Ministry of Finance, because I do believe I'm getting conflicting position on this particular issue in relation to gratuity payment and withholding taxes. And my reason for indicating keep in view, because I need a position from the Ministry of Finance on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ultimately, it's an issue of tax law. It does the gratuity payment fall within the net of the withholding tax system that's applicable to salaries, or not? Apparently, it's being treated as being not taxable at all, or at least not subject to withholding tax, though it's an emolument. So I don't know on what basis that position is being taken, but it must be something that the government should clarify as they apply the tax law and they make the payments.
Over the years, we have received different legal opinions on it, and there was one that we had received some time ago that was more conclusive to say, yes, it is taxable because it constitutes periodic payments, but still I'm hearing different views, and I believe that ministries also hold different views on it. So the Ministry of Finance needs to be clear on it.
All right, thank you. So if we could move to the rehabilitation program. We have a number of prompts on this. AG, if you want to take us through in whatever order you see
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair. Well, there's one prompt in relation to the rehabilitation program. Yes, and of course, this was a special investigation that sought to examine the controls governing this program. emanating from that audit, there are 4 issues. 2 relate to control deficiencies, and 2 relate to issues as a consequence of those control deficiencies. Mr. Chairman, the PS can speak to the steps taken to actually address the control deficiencies, but I would have communicated to you that there are 2 issues that are the subject of an investigation and such. I would not speak specifically to them at this point.
So, PS, perhaps you could respond in relation to the steps that are being taken to address the control issues highlighted in the report.
All right. First and foremost, Chairman, we have taken a number of steps. Some are still in process. First and foremost, we are in the process, and we're very much advanced in the process of reviewing our rehabilitation grants policy and procedures manual for the program. We have sorry, Chairman. We have had a number of training sessions, resensitization sessions with our parish persons, reminding them, because it was something that was in place before, reminding them or resensitizing them on the whole monitoring and evaluation process for grants that have been approved. We are in the process of, notwithstanding, we're in the process of making the process a little more standardized across the parish offices. In terms of some of our internal procedures, we have removed the whole matter of handwritten submissions to the accounting department. All the submissions to the accounting department are now typed. They are the submissions to the accounting department. We have previously, there were no subtotals. Now they're totaled and signed, and every submission to the accounting department tallies back with the payment voucher that is prepared and sent down. In addition, once a payment is being sent, electronic mail is sent to the accounting department to advise them that they are to expect payment voucher X with 20 persons with a total of X amount, and that those emails come from only one of 2 designated officers. We have also instituted where the parish, when they send, well, we have reinforced with the parishes that all requests for assistance must be accompanied with a report. We have now included or incorporated more the accounting department that is in head office, well, not the main accounting department, but there's a small accounting department aligned to the division with PATH. And so we have incorporated those accounting personnel to assist us in doing independent checks before the voucher is sent down. So in the event that somebody didn't tally something correctly, that is checked by a second person before it actually goes to the accounting department. We're also in the process of dialogue with our IT department to develop a standalone or a separate IT system for the program. Right now, there is a database, but it is not the ideal sort of database, but there is a database now, but we're in discussion with our IT department about developing a special system to be able to manage the rehab program. We have also begun the discussion to do some amount of cross-matching with the database of persons who we assist and our HR database, because one of the concerns from the Auditor General is the issue of conflict of interest. We also have, Chairman, have reiterated to the staff the policy, as in the staff orders, section 4, that speaks the conflict of interest, and we have reminded staff about it. It has been sent in writing to all the staff. We have developed a declaration form where the staff can say that there is, if there is. So we have done quite a bit of things, and we welcome the AG's team to come and, look at the system that we've been able to put in since the audit.
So is that all of those responses to the audit are designed internally, or is there any kind of guidance that you get as to how to improve your controls from outside of the ministry, or is it just your own internal responses formed from the points that were made in the audit report?
Well, Chairman, it's a combination of both. The audit pointed some weaknesses which we were able to address internally, but also some of it was in dialogue with some of the AG's persons. What I must also point out, Chairman, is that since the audit, we have sent our chief internal auditor and another member of the audit team on a special course looking at fraud detection. So we have taken the report very seriously, and we're really trying to strengthen our internal mechanisms.
Anybody with any comments on this? If not, all right, we can move on from that. Any other business? I just wanted to raise a question in relation to the equity, the NIF equity management briefing report on that. And the whole question of, again, conflicts of interest that were cited as being present in some of the transactions that the NIF had entered into. The briefing report cited both a lack of due diligence in forming investment decisions in relation to the NIS, and also mentioned transactions in which persons close to officers, family members of officers who work in the unit, the companies that they are associated with or which they own, were the shares in those companies were involved in transactions undertaken by the NIF itself. And I just wondered what has been the response in relation to that specific issue in terms of how was it addressed within the NIS, that particular conflict of interest that was cited in the briefing report, and what is being done to ensure that whenever positions are taken by the NIF by buying securities, that there's some diligence that's done around the issue of those securities, whether it be debt or equity. We've seen transactions where the normal protocols of approvals were not followed at the time, and so on, breakdown in those procedures. But the idea of buying investments without having done a proper analysis on what you're buying is of concern, given that this unit is managing the public pension fund of the country, which we all know has issues anyway in terms of adequacy of funding. So those issues would only be worsened if it's not being managed diligently or honestly. So this is a particular concern to me, and I wondered if you could comment on what has been done arising out of these particular issues that were raised in this briefing report.
Thank you, Chairman. I will. this particular matter is the subject of an ongoing investigation, so I will try not to comment too much because I do not want to prejudice any investigation. But
and please follow that guideline that you've imposed on yourself, and do not say anything that might compromise that.
So what I will say, though, Chairman...
Just clarification, this investigation you refer to, it's a law enforcement investigation?
Law enforcement investigation. And so what I will say, Chairman, is that we have the investment policy is now under review. However, notwithstanding that, instructions have been given that the policy must be faithfully followed, as is documented. Since the report, all matters now go to the investment committee or the board for approval. And I think that is...
In terms of your review of your investment policy, is that an internal review, or is any external expertise being sought to review the policy that has been followed and to ensure that it is fit for purpose in the current environment?
As it is now, it is an internal review. That policy will be sent to the Ministry of Finance for approval. The policy was last approved by Finance in 2016. So periodically the policy is reviewed and it goes to the Ministry of Finance. But I think what has happened, Chairman, is that customs and practice differs from what the policy says. And so the instruction is that until that policy is revised and approved, that we must faithfully follow the policy. You asked a question about investments and not the proper due diligence being done. The information that I have is that whenever there is a new investment, there is usually the analysis that is done, if it's a stock, if it's a bond, and so forth. There is an analysis that looks at the company, the stock trend, and so forth that is done. What may not have been faithfully done is when you have, for example, things that are already in your portfolio and you are going to be expanding. So you have X amount of shares in a particular company and you are going to be seeking to purchase additional. The level of detailed analysis it's not as detailed as if we're a new company. Of course, some analysis is done because your decision must be informed. You can't just get up and purchase stocks like that. So the point I'm making is there are varying degrees of analysis that is done based on the particular investment that presents itself.
I would imagine that all positions should be subject to periodic review because it's a dynamic situation. What was a good investment 3 years ago may no longer be because the competitive landscape may have changed. The overall economic climate may have worsened as regards that particular company's fortunes and so on. So it should not just be a situation where you analyze a potential investment when you make it, and then again, if you're deciding to go further into that particular exposure. But there should be a process of reviewing all of your investments on a regular basis to see whether or not you should be still in it, whether it's a good time to come out or what.
And that is done on a monthly basis, Chairman, where the portfolio, there is a report that is prepared for the board each month that details the performance of the portfolio over the month.
But that would be a monthly analysis. I don't think would be looking at the actual underlying companies and their fortunes in the kind of detail I'm talking about. That might be looking at the portfolio as a whole, what's happening in the market, how it, what its price multiple is, P multiple, and those sort of things. But I'm talking about a more detailed analysis on the fortunes of the particular asset that you have, which should happen on a regular basis. I don't think monthly is necessary, but even every 6 months or every year, just to ensure that you're not staying in a position longer than you should,
right.
and so on.
And Chairman, that is primarily one of the role of the investment committee, and in particular the board of the National Insurance Fund. But Chairman, permit me to make a correction. I said 2016, it was 2014. The policy was last reviewed and approved by the Ministry of Finance. So I think I'd mentioned 2016. My apology.
And does the Ministry of Finance have expertise in investing? I'm just querying. I mean, that's not really what the Ministry of Finance does. I'm just wondering whether this is an area. I mean, such a huge fund. It's the largest, or one of the largest funds in the country, the NIS. And it seems to me that the expertise in terms of how it's managed, or whether the policy touches all the right bases and so on and is current, we ought to consider looking outside of what is available in the public sector in terms of seeing that the policy is fit for purpose going forward, because this is not the core business of the Ministry of Finance.
We take your suggestion in the review that we're doing, but as a ministry and the fund, we have to get the sign-off of a revised policy from the Ministry of Finance.
I understand that. I'm just wondering whether their input is sufficient. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just two things. My recollection was that when the board was set up, it was really just an advisory board. And whether that has now changed, if it has any statutory basis. And second, whether the investment management committee is a committee of the same advisory board. And therefore it would seem that, somebody else has to have the decision-making authority if the board is just an advisory board and doesn't really have any standing in law. Yeah. That's my first question. And second is, just looking at the extracts from the policy guideline. For example, for stocks that fall within their respective sectors, a price earnings range shall be assigned for the purpose of indicating whether to buy, hold, or sell. Now, Mr. Chairman, as you well know, in our market, which is so thin, price earnings ranges can fluctuate tremendously from day to day. Relatively small trades can affect prices by very substantial percentages. To have a sort of technical approach to buying, selling, or holding, I think is unwise. Well, generally, I come from a school of fundamental analysis, but generally, even in well-developed deep markets, you can probably get away with using this approach. But in a thin market like the Jamaica Stock Exchange, I think your suggestion where at least annually a thorough fundamental analysis of each of the companies should be done, assessing, not just, the sort of ratios that are spit out from doing a superficial analysis, but looking at the earnings prospects for the company, the quality of management, looking at the audit reports and seeing if there are any red flags raised by the independent auditors. I mean, it really needs that sort of thorough analysis rather than just we buy it once, and if it doesn't fluctuate, or usually by the time in our market there's some persistent red flag is thrown up, it might be too late. So, exactly,
Chairman, I want to assure that there is ongoing analysis that is done looking at the various portfolio, the stocks, the bonds, the various assets that the fund may hold in terms of change in value and so forth. So that is an ongoing process. And a full review is now being done a full detailed review is now being done on all of the various investments held by the fund. You asked a question about the
legal
board,
framework, the governance framework.
The board.
Yeah.
The investment committee is a subset of the board. Not right now. Okay. The investment committee is a subset of the board. It is an advisory board, yes, and it is an advisory board, however, that if you look at the policy that has been developed, it's an advisory board with more than an advisory role. And because of the anomaly that exists, it is one of the entities or areas of government that is now under review in terms of the modernization and, you know, we are now looking at whether or not it should become a statutory body or what kind of body it should become. So it has a board, an executive board of management. Even though it's an advisory board, I want to assure you it has more than an advisory role function.
The assets of the fund are vested in who is the legal vehicle in which the assets are held, and what name. If you buy stocks in listed companies, is it held in the name of the National Insurance Fund, or is it held in the name of the Accountant General for the National Insurance Fund? How is it held? You know.
The assets in terms of lands, buildings, and so forth are held in the Commission of Land's name. Some other are in the NIF's name, such as stocks, listed stocks, that is, and bonds. And the bonds are in NIF. And Accountant General? Some of the unlisted are in Accountant General's.
Yeah, it's a kind of untidy way of dealing with it. The Commission of Lands holds government property, real estate, on behalf of the, under the Crown Property Vesting Act. But these are not government assets. These are trust assets for contributors to the scheme. So there's no real reason why the Commission of Lands should be holding it, other than the fact that there is no proper established legal framework for the assets to be held under. So it seems to me that given the problems that we've been having and seeing and so on, this is an opportune time to have a proper legal review of the arrangements to see what ought to be in place to ensure the proper custodianship of these assets from a legal perspective.
And that is why it is under review right now.
Mr. Dunn, you would want to ask me?
Well, it's similar to the answer about under review, because I wanted to know, and maybe I just don't know enough to even ask this question, but who has oversight over this particular committee, and what if there's an existing body, what is their TOR, because the NIF is one of the largest funds in Jamaica. We have to ensure it's managed properly.
The investment committee reports to the board, and the board is appointed by the minister. There is, in some of the investments, based on what is in the policy, they do go to the Ministry of Finance to approve, and above another threshold, it may require the approval of cabinet. So there are varying thresholds for approval for investments.
Okay, thank you, PS, thank you, members. And thank you for the Auditor General and our staff and other technical personnel who have been here. I think, unless there's any other business, I would ask if we could have set the date to the next meeting.
They were correct, but I don't think you want to listen to me on the record.
That's my
All right, delete. Yeah. All right. Date of next meeting?
I had one.
You see it?
Well, we could continue.
Oh, okay.
The issue will happen with the verification.
Okay, so that's finished. Thank you.
That needs to be carried out for us to know still are outstanding issues.
Oh, so you want what you want to do?
That's what I'm saying.
All right. Well, the clerk is asking that we don't fix a date yet for the next meeting because there's some things. There's a process that is underway, which is not yet complete. So we will set the next meeting by way of a notice as soon as we're in a position to proceed. Would anyone care to move for the adjournment? Thank you. Seconded. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.